Um, and sorry, oh, Jane, you already are on it. Thank you for recording. Perfect. Um, we are gonna spend some time with me talking from like a career perspective, excuse me, Alex from a academic planning perspective, and then Chirayu is here from ISSS. So we'll get lots of good perspectives on what to think about as you're choosing an academic major. You can go to the next slide. So like I said, my name is Holly, she, her. I'm a career coach in CLA Career Services. So this will be a broad presentation that applies to any college. So don't worry about my title. That's just where I am housed. And then I'll pass it on to Chirayu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. Thank you, Holly, for having me here. My name is Chirayu Dongre. I'm an F1 advisor and a J1 student advisor in ISSS, and I use he, him pronouns. And today I'll be talking about F1 work authorization as it relates to your major selection and how it ties to work off campus. And I'll pass it on to Alex.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Coppridge. I use she, her pronouns. I work as a major exploration coach with CAPE, the Center for Academic Planning and Exploration. And I'm excited to talk with you all about some different things you might consider and some strategies and resources as you explore majors.
So here's our brief agenda for the day. We'll start by talking about why it even matters what major you choose in undergrad, how you can start exploring whether you're thinking more about your career path or your majors first. Often people are thinking about both at once. How to make that decision. Like Shrayu said, he'll give a brief introduction to work authorization. And then we also wanted to talk about, sometimes students have questions about whether it's a good idea to double major or to have multiple majors or add on a minor. And then we'll end with some action steps. And I just wanted to also mention that this is intended for undergraduate international students. And so it's not as good of a fit if you are like about to graduate and already have a degree plan. But if you're exploring or thinking about changing your major, this is a great fit for you. Okay, so what is major exploration? The process of declaring a major is a little bit different at each university around the US and also in other countries. But it's pretty common in the US to start your undergraduate studies without officially declaring a major. So right now, you're probably starting to learn about your options at the University of Minnesota and considering how different majors can meet your needs or goals. Or maybe you just have a big question mark and that's why you're here too. That's great as well. But this learning process is something we call major exploration. And there are lots of resources to help you do this. You probably came into the U with a plan in mind. Most students have a couple thoughts in mind. I know you have to indicate what your major plan is, but it's common for that plan that you come to college with to shift at least a little at some point. And our hope is that you're able to just be adaptive and not judge yourself if that happens, and know that you have lots of support to help you make those decisions. Awesome. So I wanted to show this is a career management model. And if you're in a different college, your college probably has something similar. We think about career in terms of exploration, gaining experience, and then in order to go on to your next experience, building some tools to help you excel. So some of those sort of traditional career things that you might think of, like resumes, cover letters, preparing for interviews. Um, a lot of times people kind of want to rush into that experience phase. I know I felt like that as an undergrad student too. We think about, I need to get an internship as soon as possible. I need to gain experience so that I can have an impressive resume. And that is super worthwhile and will come with time. But it's most helpful for most people to start exploring and thinking about who you are, what you need, what challenges you might have, what countries you might want to consider living in, that kind of thing. And so today we're going to be focusing on that explore section. What makes a major a good fit is pretty different for everyone because we all have different priorities, needs, skills, goals, all of those things. We also wanted to mention there's no shame in having any priorities. So, for example, sometimes we hear that it's most important for someone to have like a high-paying job, for example, or it might be most important for you to have a less stressful job and be able to focus on finding a work-life balance. Often what works well for you and your friend might be different. So just not comparing yourself to others too much as you make those decisions is helpful. Okay, so why does it matter what major you choose? Choosing a major won't necessarily dictate the career path or what specific jobs you're able to have. But if you want to work in the US, your job does have to be related to your major in order to obtain US work authorization and be able to work off campus in the US. Um, no matter where you want to work or live in the future, it is important to know that your major is an academic foundation that will impact your skills, knowledge, and experience that you develop. So even if you don't know exactly what you want to do for your career right now, which is most people probably, it's a good time to start thinking about what you want to have a good foundation in or a good foundation of knowledge in, as well as what countries you're considering working in the future. And then this is a little bit less fun, but you also do, according to university policy, have to declare your major by the end of your fourth semester. So it's something that you need to do in order to progress with your degree. So I'm going to pass it on over to Alex to talk about decision making.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. So I'm going to chat a little bit about the framework for exploring majors that CAPE uses, which is based on getting to know about yourself, knowing your options, trying things out, and then evaluating and reflecting based on that exploration that you've done in order to move towards a decision regarding your major. So CAPE uses this visual to kind of help us think about how to navigate the decision-making process and identify a next step. And one thing I want to name with this is that there's not really a right or wrong place to enter this process. It's kind of just wherever you're at. Um, Often it can be helpful to get started with learning more about yourself. So that might be connecting with what you already know about yourself, surrounding your interests, strengths, opportunities for growth. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in upcoming slides. And then also then moving into kind of taking that self-knowledge with you and identifying and researching different options that are available to you. So we're going to also talk about ways that you can do that. So exploring what majors are available at the U based on your particular considerations, what feels like good options, connecting those to different career opportunities. Then evaluating and reflecting. So taking that self-knowledge that you have and applying it to evaluate the different information and options that you have learned about. We recommend trying something, and there's lots of different ways that you can go about this. It's kind of really based on how you tend to like to make decisions. So maybe you're somebody who really likes to connect with other people and learn from their experience. So you might talk to other folks who are either in a major that you're considering or maybe take a class. Maybe you like to learn through doing. So explore an internship or a class, whatever feels like the right fit. And then moving into reevaluating and reflecting based on the learning about yourself, the identifying and researching options and trying things, reevaluating where you're at, and seeing if you have any remaining questions or any remaining things you can do to move toward that decision about narrowing in on your major. There isn't really like a magic formula for picking a major, but we find that this method and taking these approaches tends to be pretty helpful. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about that piece around connecting to yourself and reflecting on kind of what you already know about yourself and what you have to learn about yourself that's going to be helpful as you make a decision about your major. And some of these things truly you might still be learning. And that's not only is that okay, that's exciting. That's great. That's part of what college is all about. So I'm going to go through kind of each of these different dimensions. So one area to think about is your interests. So some questions that you might ask yourself are things like, what do I enjoy learning about? What are some of the activities that I have for a long time like to do, or maybe like to do as a child, but moved away from and want to come back to? Or things that make you feel like really present and in the moment that you lose track of time doing, and seeing how you might incorporate those into a major. A second area is thinking about your values or what matters to you. And I want to echo what Holly was really helpful is sharing about there isn't really, there's no like right or wrong in terms of what you value for a major. So if you are somebody who knows that you really want to help people, or if you're somebody who knows that you really want to earn, make a solid financial income in the future, that's just helpful information to know, to be clear about those values and then use those as you're making a decision. But yeah, echoing what Holly said about just encouraging you not to judge yourself for your values and just use them to find the right choice for you. Also thinking about your strengths. So I'm going to differentiate strengths and skills. Strengths, we tend to think of as things that you're kind of just like naturally good at or just kind of possess. So you might think about like, what are some things that people in your life compliment you on or notice about you? Or what are some of the strengths that really like energize you and you see yourself wanting to apply and build on in the future? And then also thinking about skills, which are a little bit different in that, whereas you tend to kind of possess strengths, skills are more things that you develop and grow through education and practice. So you might ask yourself questions like, what are some skills that I really want to make sure I grow in college, that feels like college would be a good space to grow in these skills? And I would feel when I graduate, if I spent time working on that, that would feel really good. All right, we're going to move into talking a little bit about different resources available to help you explore your options. So I'm going to highlight a number of different resources through CAPE, the Center for Academic Planning and Exploration, where I work. One is the CAPE major profiles. So I'm going to put a link in the chat later, but this is a really helpful tool to start digging into and learning information about the different majors that you might be considering. So you can learn things like, what kind of classes would I take in this major? What are career opportunities that are connected to this major? That's, I think, one of the most helpful ways to sort of get started with exploring more and comparing majors. We also have the Major Network, which is a peer mentoring network. So you complete a quick form and indicate majors that you're interested in. And then our wonderful coordinators work to find you a peer mentor who you can meet with and ask questions. They're a student who's completed advanced coursework in the major, so they can give you really helpful information about a student's perspective. Additionally, if you want a different approach to getting a student's perspective and insight, we have peer coaching. So CAPE has both professional coaching staff like myself who meet with students one-on-one for individual coaching. And then we also have peer coaching, which are 15-minute sessions, drop-in sessions where you can get some support from a peer coach to explore questions about your majors. We have change of college coaching. So if you are interested in a major that happens to be in a different college and you're thinking you might need to change colleges, which I have to say is a pretty common thing that happens in college. So if you find yourself in that place, know that there is really great support for that. In CAPE, we have a change of college coach. Hannah, they're wonderful, and they support students who are navigating the change of college process. And then finally, CAPE has our OUE 2001 Academic Planning and Exploration course, which is a 7-week course. Our next session starts March 18th. So if it feels like a good fit, you could register for it. And it kind of gives you some in-depth support of working towards a decision about your major.
Thanks, Alex. Um, we wanted to talk about, I think we have about 4 different sort of thoughts or questions or issues that students most commonly come to us with when they're thinking about choosing a major. And this is not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's other questions on your mind too, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well. But thinking about some of the main things that tend to be a focus for folks when they're choosing a major. So the first one is job security and stability. I just want to mention it's important to remember that no one can fully predict the future for any careers or job outlooks. We do our best. We have access to information about sort of the predicted trends and the top employers or top industries that are growing a lot based on location and field. But just remembering that things can change. And I know a lot is honestly has changed even in the last couple of weeks. And so just knowing that no one can predict the future, but we can do our best to guide you towards choices that work best for you. Um, if you're considering working in your home country or another country outside of the US, it will be helpful to consider if a specific major or degree is required for any careers that you're considering in that country. And I know that can be hard if you don't know what career you're considering. That would be a good time to come in and talk to a career coach in your college so they can help you start with that process and start that research just to keep your options open. Sometimes students are also concerned about getting an internship with an employer or organization that is easily recognizable in other countries during their undergrad time in the US. So if that is you, if you already have an employer or a company in mind that you're like, I really want to gain experience here, that can be a place to start thinking about majors that will prepare you to work for those companies. But even more important or important alongside of that will be building relationships and networking. And that's not something we'll dive into today, but if you want to learn more about ways to network, again, that's something that maybe in your second or third year you can talk more with your career coach or another staff member about. And then I'll just mention quickly, there's 2 resources that will be linked here. You can tell that they're linked because of the underline. And I'll send the slides out at the end of this so you can access those links to gain more information about industry trends. The top link is for mostly for other countries. You can find information about the US as well. And then the bottom one, obviously, is just for US. And then Alex, you're muted, sorry.
I was wondering when in this presentation that would happen. Now is the moment. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about enjoying your job and thinking about how you might want to make an impact. And again, I think this is a really helpful place to come back to those kind of core pieces of self-knowledge around values, interests, skills, and strengths. So you might think about with your values, what are values that feel really important to you to prioritize in your job? And especially in the kind of impact that you want to make through the work that you do. So thinking about like what kind of problems do you want to solve and what sort of knowledge and experience will help you. Again, thinking about your values, there's not a right or wrong. So it might be that you are really oriented to making an impact through helping people through your work or helping your family. And just kind of being clear about that is helpful. It can also be helpful to come back to your interests. And one way of exploring this a little bit more is identifying what are organizations or people who are already doing work that I find like really meaningful, and then trying to connect with them or trying to do some research to learn more about their journey and learn more about what they do and see how it could be a good fit for you. And then thinking about your skills and strengths, I recommend exploring a little bit more about how you can use college to grow in those areas in a way that will allow you to make the kind of impact that you want.
I almost just didn't unmute myself too. You're in good company. Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Another one that we think people often have on their mind, whether you're also considering going directly into industry or you know you want to go to graduate school already, is at least starting to think about how to be a competitive applicant for graduate programs. Um, Most graduate programs actually do not require a specific major, but they do often require specific prerequisite courses. So if you already know what kind of programs you're interested in, so for example, sometimes pre-professional programs like medical school will have really specific prerequisite courses. And so you can do some research on what those courses are that are required and work with your academic advisor to find support, finding that information if you don't know where to find it. But that information can help you decide on your major too, because if you have a list of classes that you know are required for your graduate school goals, you can try to find a major that overlaps a lot so that you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Often experiences outside of academics are important as well. So thinking about depending on what program you're interested in, I'll just use like a master's in counseling or social work as an example. Gaining experience working with people, whether it's through volunteering, an on-campus job, an off-campus job, gaining experience working with people is just as important, if not more, as choosing a major that aligns with your goal program in that case. Another example is if you're interested in a research-based graduate program, like most PhDs, it's a good idea to gain research experience as an undergraduate student. And we're really lucky here at the U. We have a huge focus on research. And so we have a lot of support for students to get involved in research opportunities, even in their undergraduate years. So the link on your screen that says undergraduate research will take you to the undergraduate research opportunities program, which is a great way to gain experience in undergrad with research. And you also get funding for it in the form of a tuition scholarship. So international students are able to accept that typically. Many students find it helpful to have a few semesters on campus before doing this program, just because it can be easier to know what kind of research you'd be interested in doing and finding a faculty member to partner with. But wanted to mention it earlier on so that you can start thinking if it would be a good fit for you. Often we hear that it's overwhelming to start thinking about research. And so just know that there's, again, a lot of support for this process. They have peer coach hours as well, most days of the week, and they accept applications each semester. So it's pretty easy to get involved when the time is right for you. And then once you get to the point where you're researching different graduate schools and programs, maybe in a couple semesters when you feel a little bit more certain about what you are hoping to go to school for, you may want to also consider what the alumni network of the grad program is like, how connected they are, and how the career services at that school or in that program supports international students. So that's just a little bit about preparing for graduate school. And then lastly, living in a specific location is something that will come up a lot too. And so we're going to focus right now on if you're considering working in the US. So I'll pass it over to Chirayu.
All right, great. Thank you. And I did remember to unmute myself. It's nice when others have made the error prior to you, and so it's a good reminder. Anyway, so I will focus, like I said, on F1 work authorization in the United States. And I'll talk through kind of the differences, but we'll spend most of my time talking about CPT. So broadly speaking, F1 work regulations or employment regulations describe where and when an F1 student may work while they're enrolled, in their academic program. there are two types of employments that can happen. There's on-campus employment and there's off-campus employment. And on-campus employment, and I'm just going to note here that we do have on our website a really nice page that describes both of these options and goes into far more detail than I'm going to here, on the rules that govern both of these types of employments. So definitely check those out. But let's touch on campus employment really quickly first. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, so on-campus employment, and some of you in this session may be employed on campus, so you would be familiar with this. On-campus employment is a job that you are doing on campus and you are paid by the University of Minnesota. That is how you know it's an on-campus job, where your employer is the University of Minnesota and your paycheck is coming from the University of Minnesota. During the academic terms of fall and spring, the F1 regulations limit students to working up to 20 hours per week, but no more. So if you have an on-campus job, you can have multiple on-campus jobs, that's okay. It is part-time, meaning that you can work no more than 20 hours per week during the academic term. During the summer break, as well as the spring break and winter break, you can work full-time. And full-time employment is defined by the F1 regulations as anything that is more than 20 hours per week. So technically, even if you work 20.5 hours per week, the US government considers that to be full-time employment. So this is important to understand because it doesn't really match with the way full-time work is understood more commonly in the culture. You know, that's understood to be a 40-hour work week is understood to be full-time employment. That's different with F1 regulations, where full-time employment is considered to be anything more than 20 hours per week. A plug here for the Office of Human Resources page. This is where, if you are interested in finding a student job or a on-campus job, that's where you go. So if you go to the main HR website, which is just ohr.umn.edu, and click on the jobs tab up on top, it will take you to a page where you can view all the student jobs that are currently posted on campus, and you can apply directly to a job that you're interested in via that website. So that's on-campus employment. Let's shift now to off-campus employment. So off-campus employment for F1 students falls into two different types. The first is called CPT, which stands for Curricular Practical Training. And this is work authorization that is granted to students prior to degree completion. So while you're still in your academic program, you're still studying, you're still making progress toward completing your requirements, you would use CPT. There's the second option, which is called OPT, or Optional Practical Training. And this is work authorization that is granted after you have graduated or after you have completed your degree. This authorization is granted for a duration of 12 months. And if you are in a major that is a STEM eligible major, then you have the option as well of extending the initial 12-month authorization for OPT for a further 24 months, giving you a total of 36 months or 3 years on OPT. Quick note here is that CPT is granted by ISSS, so we approve a CPT authorization, whereas OPT is granted by the US government or USCIS. And I will focus now more on CPT. I'll explain why that is. And the next sort of remainder of my portion is going to be really talking about CPT, how it works, what it is, how you apply, and so on. So we can move on to the next slide. Great, thank you. Okay, so CPT, like I said, is one of the types of off-campus work authorization. Um, the job that you do for CPT must be related to your academic major. So, Holly and Alex have spent time talking about how to think about choosing a major and the different variables that go into making that decision. Um, Once you have gone through that process and you've arrived at the choice for you, you might then be at a point where you're thinking about how can I translate or connect what I'm learning in the classroom and sort of the knowledge and the skills that I'm kind of acquiring through an academic setting. How can I connect that to the real world? And this is where, speaking with a career coach, using your career services in your colleges is really critical to help identify what internship options there might be off campus for you. But also don't overlook the fact that there are very possibly on campus work options that directly relate to your major that are available to you. And the benefit there, of course, is because it is on-campus work, you don't need to seek work authorization for it. You already are authorized to work on campus. But let's say you do find an internship. Let's say you are, you go to a career fair and you have a great interaction with someone and you end up interviewing with them and they would like to offer you an internship for the summer. How does that work? So you first must have a job to apply for CPT. So that's the first step. If you have an internship offer, you've completed the first step in the application process, which is you have a job offer. You then also want to make sure that you're talking with your academic advisor in your college because they have to approve your CPT request. And the conversation with them is also helpful because when they are approving your CPT request, not only are they verifying that you are enrolled in that particular major, they're also verifying that the job that you have been offered is directly related to that major. So that connection and that relationship with the advisor, with your academic advisor, is really, really important. So you want to make sure you are in communication with them. Like I said earlier, this is work authorization that is granted prior to graduation. So this is something you would do, during the semester or during the summer full-time or during the semester on a part-time basis. The job type, it doesn't really matter in terms of what the job is called. We have internships or jobs or employment offers that are called internships or co-ops or practicums or field work. From an F1 standpoint, those are just all different words to describe an employment opportunity. So from an F1 standpoint, it doesn't so much matter to us what it's being called. It really matters more to us that it is an off-campus employment opportunity that is paid. So that's really what we're mostly focused on. Other than that, it could be a co-op or an internship or whatever else. It doesn't really matter too much. On the next slide now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about CPT and the kind of particular requirements of CPT. So must have a job offer before you can apply. If you don't have a job offer, you are not actually even able to fill out the CPT application on our portal. And the portal, the My ISSS portal, is how you would complete and submit a CPT application with ISSS. If it's your first time applying for CPT, it can be a bit confusing, and that's okay. We're here to help. The portal links to a Canvas workshop, which is one of the first required steps of completing that application. And that workshop will go into really, really good detail about what you need to do uh, in what order to have your CPT approved in a timely manner. It takes ISSS about 10 business days to approve a CPT request. So if you have an internship offer and they have identified a particular start date for you, make sure that you have applied for CPT at least 2 weeks prior to that start date, which then gives us enough time to review your application, follow up with you if any edits or corrections are needed, so that we can approve the request and issue you the work authorization so you can start your job on time. Okay, so a big thing to understand with CPT requests is that you must enroll in a course. You must enroll in at least a 1-credit CPT course when you request a CPT authorization. So this course is what fulfills the C in CPT, the curricular part in CPT. The regulations, the F1 regulations essentially say that there has to be a curricular need, or there has to be an academic need for why this employment is important. Why is it necessary? So it has to be integral to your academic curriculum. And the way we justify that is via the registration or enrollment in a 1-credit CPT course. Now, most colleges, pretty much all colleges, have a function for this. Some colleges have an established CPT credit that they will direct you to enroll in if you have been offered an internship and want to apply for CPT. So that's the route you take. If your college does not have an established or identified CPT credit, that's okay. You can enroll in a 1-credit directed study or a 1-credit independent study. That's fine. The critical part, though, is that you must register for this course. If you're not enrolled in the course, we can't approve a CPT application because there is no curricular need for it. So that part's really important. And it's your academic advisor in your college that would identify what that course should be and help you to register for it. CPT is granted usually for a part-time basis. Certainly if it's for during the academic term of spring and fall, we would approve you for CPT for part-time, so 20 hours, up to 20 hours or less. And in the summer, again, because it's an official break period, we can authorize CPT on a full-time basis. There is no limit to part-time CPT. So during your undergraduate career, you can do as much part-time CPT as you want or as you can fit in. But there is a limit to full-time CPT authorization, and that limit is 12 months. So if you are approved or authorized for 12 months or more of full-time CPT, then you lose your eligibility for OPT. So in other words, during your 4 years or 4+ years of your undergraduate career, if you use up more than 12 months of full-time CPT, you will not be able to apply for OPT once you graduate. Now, having said that, it is almost impossible as an undergraduate student to use 12 months of full-time CPT. It can happen, but it is extremely rare. So it's not something that as an undergrad, you need to worry about too much. This is really more when you're usually a doctoral student. This can be an issue, or you have to pay attention to it more. There is no cost to apply for CPT. It's totally free. There isn't a fee that you pay to ISSS or to USCIS or anything to apply for CPT. The only cost to you is really the registration for that 1-credit course. However, you can always add that course to your fall or spring registrations so that it falls under that that flat rate, I think it's whatever, if you enroll in like 13 credits or more, every credit after 13 is more or less like free. You don't get charged for it. So ISSS has a pretty flexible policy on when you can enroll in your CPT credit. But we do defer to the college policy on what their requirement is for enrolling in an internship credit or a CPT credit. So that's a conversation you want to make sure you're having with your college and your academic advisor. Let's see if there's anything more I want to say about. I don't want to overload with information either. I want to give you a kind of a nice overview of CPT. I could talk for an hour on CPT, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm trying to give you a nice overview and direct you to the website and to the Canvas workshop, because if you are at a stage where you are pretty, you maybe have just declared your major, or you were thinking that you're getting close to declaring your major, or you're just curious about how off-campus CPT works, check out the website, check out the ISSS website, and check out the Canvas workshop. Anyone can do that workshop. It doesn't matter if you haven't declared a major or anything like that. That workshop is available to anyone. So those those resources will go into a lot more detail about CPT. And then certainly if you have questions that come up after that, don't hesitate to contact an ISSS advisor. Okay, so I'll kind of give a brief run through of the application timeline. Okay, so let's say you've started your degree program, and I think if you just sort of click through, it's gonna pop up some dates here. So let's say you began your degree program in the fall of 2024. Okay, that was your first semester here, and you're currently now in your spring term. Per the F1 regulations, you become eligible for CPT after completing one academic year. So you will have completed one full academic year in F1 status at the end of the spring semester, which means you become eligible for CPT during the summer, the upcoming summer of 2025. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that even though from a regulatory standpoint, you do become eligible for CPT during the summer, you need to have declared a major. Now, I know for a lot of first-year students, that hasn't really happened after your first year. You might know what you want to major in, but you either cannot officially apply to the major and be admitted to it until maybe the fall, or you might not really know what you want to major in, you haven't declared. So because your off-campus job must be related to your academic field of study, must be related to your major, if you haven't declared a major, CPT unfortunately isn't an option for you until you have actually declared that major. That aside, if you have declared a major, then you would be eligible for CPT after the first academic year. Then, if you did CPT during the summer, you would be eligible for full time. During the fall and spring semester, the following academic year, if the employer wanted to keep you on, you could be employed on a part-time basis. We would approve you for part-time CPT. And, that cycle would just sort of repeat until you graduate. So if we move forward a little bit more on these slides, you might do full-time CPT again the summer of 2026, and then you have another academic year 26-27 where you do part-time CPT again. Maybe you do full-time CPT in the summer of 2027 again, and then for that final year you might do part-time CPT again. You would graduate in, say, May 2028, and after that, if you wanted to continue working in the United States, that's the point at which OPT takes over, and you would be applying for OPT. So you can be authorized for CPT until you complete your degree. So you can work off campus using CPT authorization right up until your last term before you graduate. Okay. Okay. Let's move on to the next. Okay, so the workshops that I was talking about, they are via accessed via the My ISSS portal. So the My ISSS portal, you log in with your X500 and password. Once you log in, you click on the F1 Student Services tab, and it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. For CPT, the form is called CPT request. For OPT, it's called OPT. You click on those, and it will take you to the steps needed to apply for either one of those. And the first step in each of those applications is the workshop. Okay. Okay. And finally, I think if you have questions after this, you can send an email just to iss@umn.edu. I'll put my email in the chat as well, so you can email me. Feel free to email me as well. If you would like to meet with an advisor, we have virtual advising appointments that you can schedule via that link right there. And that's a one-on-one appointment with an F1 advisor. We also do offer drop-in virtual advising, and the link is there for the virtual advising drop-ins. We also have in-person advising, drop-in advising for students in our main office in 190 Humphrey. That contact us that contact us link right there gives a schedule of what days and what times that we offer the drop-in services. So, take a look at those and come in and talk with us or schedule an appointment. And we're happy to talk you through any questions you might have about CPT or any F1 related question you might have. And with that, I think I am kicking it back to, I think, Holly.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much. It's so helpful to see an example of how students might go through their career too. Okay, so this is one of our last topics. So thanks for hanging with us during this kind of lunchtime. We wanted to briefly discuss people who are considering double majoring or having multiple majors or adding on a minor and kind of the reasons you would do that and maybe some things to think about to make sure it's a good fit for you. So from a career perspective, we like to mention to students that majors and minors are just a couple of the factors that employers consider when they look at your qualifications. Obviously, depending on your field, there can be a bigger emphasis on your degree, but a lot of times it has more to do with the whole package of your qualifications, including the coursework from your academic major, but they won't always just look at just the degree name. You need to be sure that if you're working in the US, like Tarayu was talking about with CPT and OPT, that your role aligns with your major, obviously. But otherwise, from an employer perspective, being able to communicate your skills and knowledge related to the role is really the most important. And likely you'll be able to draw from your academic background, like I said, but you'll also draw from other experiences too. So some of the things that I like to encourage people to think about if they're thinking about adding on to their academic plan is, would it help you build relationships or get in front of professors or other people in a field you're considering working in? So sometimes that can be relevant for grad school. Sometimes it's relevant for going straight into working too. Do you feel like you want all of the courses in that set, major or minor, to help you build your skill set or knowledge in an area that you're considering? Or do you feel like you could meet that need, picking and choosing classes in that department that feel most relevant to you? And sometimes that's not possible too. Sometimes colleges require you to declare in order to take some of the classes. So that's something you might come upon too. Do you feel like you would be able to be academically successful by adding on those additional coursework requirements? And then something else to think about is if you're undecided on career, but you have like a couple options you want to keep open, sometimes that can be a good fit, but I would say that shouldn't be necessarily the only reason that you're doing it. And that might be a good conversation to have with one of us too. So essentially, would it help you access your goals without getting in the way of your success is how I think about it. Alex, what would you add?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm gonna kind of just like build on that to share a
Mhm.
couple of things that we think about in CAPE or encourage students to think about. And one of the things I think with a either double majoring or minoring can be, especially if you're thinking about double majoring, it can be helpful to ask yourself, like, does the major get me more than the minor does? Sometimes I'll invite students in meetings to compare the major and minor, and they'll find out through that that like, oh, actually the minor kind of gets me the courses I really want, and I end up not having to take courses that are part of the major that I don't like as much. On the flip side, some students will go through that and be like, no, actually the major is the right fit. Um, Sometimes students have questions about like what is a minor. Also, I'll share a little bit about that. It's essentially just an optional secondary field of study or specialization. So while everyone has to declare a major, doing a minor is optional. And sometimes, so we see students use them in different ways, but sometimes they'll be connected to their major and build on it, but not always. Sometimes students will, kind of building on what you shared, Holly, use minors or as a way to like create or build and invest in more of a different skill set than maybe they're getting in their major that might create different job opportunities or allow them to approach issues that they care about from like a different perspective or lens. Or sometimes students do minors because they just like the subject matter. That's what I did when I was in college. I liked reading books, so I did a minor in English literature just because it made my time in college more enjoyable, and that's great too. The other consideration is just to pay attention to the number of course requirements for majors, especially if you're thinking about double majoring. So thinking about different majors have different number of requirements that you have to complete in terms of courses. So just being mindful and talking with your advisor about how that might work in terms of your planning. Um, yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to move into talking a little bit about next steps and kind of, yeah, walking you through a little bit of what to think about as you're planning to take a next step. So a helpful way to approach this can be to think about the what, how, and when of your next step. This can just help with setting a goal. So thinking about what specifically do you want to accomplish and what is maybe one action that you can take that will help you move toward that goal. Thinking about what you're going to, how you'll do this, what you're going to do. And then also thinking about when you plan to do the task. So it might be like setting a deadline or committing to a certain time that you're going to spend time exploring majors. We've given some example ideas here that you might get started with. So examples might be to meet with a CAPE or career coach before spring break, or I'm going to put in the chat this cool major cross-off activity. So you might commit to completing that this weekend, or looking at 3 to 5 major profiles within the next couple of weeks. But really just getting started, I think, is the biggest thing. So just figuring out what's motivating you and kind of piquing your curiosity. And then I will pass it back over to Holly.
Well, we have just a few minutes left. So before I start talking about these events, start thinking about if you do have any questions for us before we wrap up today. And I'm also going to put a survey in the chat as well. That's really helpful if you complete. And then right at the very end, like I said, I'll put the link to the slides. So coming up in just the next couple of weeks here, we have 3 events we wanted to focus on. So next week is the Major Minor Expo that the Center for Academic Planning and Exploration, so Alex's office, will be hosting. It's so much fun. I'll be at the game station, which is like my favorite shift of the year, so come visit. But what's really cool about the Major Minor Expo is that it is an opportunity to get to talk face to face with different departments around campus. Alex, is it correct to say that every department comes or almost all?
Almost all, many
Almost all.
departments. And when you go onto the website, it shows what departments are going to be there. So you can double
Great.
check to see that one you want to connect with is there.
Awesome. That's great. Awesome. So it's a really nice way to informally get to meet people that are representing the department. Sometimes they bring current students. A lot of times it's staff members who are really knowledgeable about what's required for the major, what people go on to do with the major, things like that. So it's a really fun event and it's quite informal. So no preparation needed. You can just come ready to learn. Um, and get cotton candy and popcorn. Jane and Shirayu and I believe, are doing this International Student Career Fair Prep Workshop in person on February 26th. That is because there's a big job fair coming up that same week on February 28th. The job fair is the biggest in Minnesota, I believe, which is kind of cool. And it's right on our campus, which we're really lucky for. And most career centers are doing a lot of preparation workshops or events or drop-ins related to preparing for career fairs. So if that's a new topic for you, there's a lot of support for that as well. Um, but in the meantime, I'm going to throw the link to the slides in here, and I'll be able to hang out for a moment if folks want to ask questions one-on-one. But here's a link to the slides. But otherwise, thank you so much to each of our presenters and Jane behind the scenes. Appreciate you doing all that so much. And thank you so much, students, for being here. I hope this was helpful in getting you thinking about what's important to you when choosing a major. And have a good afternoon and happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. I'll stick around for a few minutes too in case anyone has any questions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks all for joining. Thanks, Holly, for organizing. And yeah, I'll stick around for a couple minutes if any work authorization type questions come.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.